I'm so glad you're with us here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. We're here to serve you around the clock at Clark.com and ClarkDeals.com. I am so impressed every week when I get our editorial list of the stories we are publishing or working on. We work so hard to give you the best information we can that you can act on in your own life for your own wallet at Clark.com. And we work so hard to give you good deals at ClarkDeals.com. I hope you'll check out our content because I believe it serves you. And by the way, when you're there, you can also post where you feel I blew it on our Clark Stinks response form at Clark.com/Clark Stinks. And every Friday, including this one, Christa selects posts to read to me on the podcast where you feel I failed you. And after I hear how I messed up, I'm going to tell you how you can build wealth in your life.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
So for those of you who watch our YouTube show, you see Christa is wearing her St. Patty's Day colors.
I've got some green on. I don't know if it shows up on
St.
the
Patty's
YouTube,
Day.
though.
What's the deal?
Money is green. We're green. It's one of our colors. This is the.
Okay.
All right. Let's start with this. Clark talked about having a neighbor with a drone survey his roof to document the roof condition for an insurance claim and pay the drone operator. I'm all for a neighbor helping out neighbors. I do want listeners to know that the FAA classifies this as a commercial act and requires a drone pilot's license with very stiff fines, up to $27,500.
David, thank you. So when a neighbor does a favor for a neighbor, you just happen to buy them some steaks, or if they're vegetarian, buy them something else or whatever. You just do something. Somebody does something nice for somebody else. It doesn't have to be a quid pro quo, particularly if it's something that would throw something into a commercial activity. My son, who's a pilot, is not allowed to carry paying passengers at this point. He's only got his private pilot's license so far. And he talks to me about how serious it is that if he ever took $1 from someone, how much trouble he'd get into. And so your point is well taken.
Your stink is so refreshing. You stink because you mentioned recently that early in your life you were interested in elected positions. It's not too late. You would easily be elected because of your heart to help people. I volunteer for a nonprofit that helps people who have financial problems. You're the best, and our country desperately needs you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. I do feel like that ship has sailed in my life. And I feel like, especially where we are as a country, we would benefit a lot from having younger eyes, younger voices running for office rather than what's the term? Is it gerontocracy?
I don't know that one.
I think we've got a very, very obviously old age home in the U.S. Senate, and we have our candidates for president that are very old. And I feel like the country needs a refresh, and I would just be more of the same, another old guy in office. So I feel like my time has passed for a political life, but I appreciate your sentiments.
Why does Clark have to dump on the employees at the phone store? Not only do many of the employees know the family share plan, but they can also point you into a very economical solution to stay in touch with kids. The Apple Watches could be added to many plans for as little as $10. Kids will get their own phone number for calls and texting and data, and parents will have the parental controls and tracking. I did quite a bit of research on this, but would have never guessed it was this cheap or easy had it not been for a local store employee, John.
John, thank you for that recommendation. And the Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or a Pixel Watch any of those are a great potential solution for a kid to stay in touch with family and family to stay in touch with the kid.
Yeah, and you had said, like, the employees won't know what you're talking about, but they're saying that's not true.
That's not true.
Okay. I just saw a video in which you discussed passing on assets through a will or trust versus to a named beneficiary. There are real advantages to naming beneficiaries. However, beneficiaries inherit completely apart from one's estate. So if the estate is tied up for some reason, the beneficiary bypasses all the mess. It also saves so much time because an heir has to wait for the will to be probated and then for the executor to distribute. But upon proof of death, a financial institution distributes quickly to beneficiaries, usually within 30 days. And then at the end it says, all that said, even someone with a modest estate should get legal advice, and Clark Stinks is a gross exaggeration. Keith.
Keith, thank you very much. One annex I'd add to what Keith posted is that a lot of people forget over a lifetime that they've designated a beneficiary, and then in their will or in a trust or whatever, they'll design those assets to go to somebody else, forgetting that they designated a beneficiary, and the beneficiary designation is almost 100% of the time superior to whatever you put in a will. So don't lose track of beneficiary designations that you do.
Happy Friday, Clark. Wishing you a great weekend, though I generally find your vocalized opinions regarding tipping to be horrendously stinkier often than the odor of a lesser anteater, reportedly way stinker than a skunk, per my research, not personal experience. Anyway, I'm taking particular issue with the tipping experience you related a few months ago, the one where you apparently were socially coerced to tip way more than you intended to at the barbershop by a customer in the next chair. I was disappointed to hear that you caved. Why did you? In this case, it looks as if you want to come across as a good guy. The underlying issues are obvious. You didn't say that the haircutter experience was exceptional. What kind of example is this for your listeners? It's interesting that in some situations you go to extreme measures to make a point. You often mention examples of requiring your kids to take the stairs instead of the elevator at the Eiffel Tower. That comes to mind. What exactly is your stance on tipping, David?
The Eiffel Tower thing. My kids still bring that up all the time. That was 2012. When does the statute of limitations run out on me
never.
making them walk the stairs at the Eiffel Tower? Oh, okay. So I felt in that case with the guy who cuts my hair, Rolando, that it was true. I was under tipping him because I had such a good deal on my haircuts because I'd bought this discount card that they were offering, that I was under tipping because I was basing the tip on what I was actually paying for the haircut instead of what was a reasonable tip. And that's what another person pointed out to me. And so I've continued to give Rolando larger tips because I was wrong in that case. It was not really a social pressure thing, David. I realized that what I was doing was under tipping.
I had the old iPad flip dance happen to me yesterday. I hate that when they flip it around.
I hate that whole iPad thing where you're at a place where suddenly they're waiting for you.
Yeah. And
They're watching.
they haven't done any like particular service, but yeah, they're watching what you're going to tip right there. It's a little uncomfortable.
So I've noticed when I spend a fair amount of time in New York City, and so you're in these lines, and I was watching the other day, and person after person put no tip. I think that's so much a thing in New York, where every place you go, they're flipping the iPad, that I've noticed that a lot of people are rebelling against it and not tipping.
Dear Mr. Howard, you smell like a car lot detail guy in Florida on the hottest day of the year. I saw your podcast dealing with new car inventory levels. You mentioned a few brands with more than the magical 55-day level, but you overlooked the grand champion of the bunch. How do you say this?
Stellantis.
Stellantis has some models with market day supply numbers in the hundreds. The Dodge Hornet has some 400 plus day supply. Now get it in gear and put the pedal to the floorboard, Alan.
You know, I wonder, we've had so much react to that podcast where I had that chart that showed days supply for all different brands. I wonder if we should post that can we put that in show
We
notes?
can link to it. Yeah, it should be in the show notes already.
Because the list is so stark. You see these brands that have more than or near a year's supply. If they didn't make another car for a year, they couldn't sell out everything they have sitting on lots right now. So the bargaining power you have right now with new cars, new vehicles, is so much based on the individual model itself and the individual brand as well.
Clark, I don't get Costco. The mosh pit begins in the parking lot. Every Costco I visited, north and south, is woefully underparked. Cars circling and honking, trying to avoid the departing customers wielding oversized carts down the middle of the drive lanes. This slam dance continues inside as shoppers angrily play bumper cars, turning the blind corner after blind corner. Merchandise layout is a confusing mess made worse by sample purveyors blocking lanes and customers outlining their life story with mouths full as they linger at the sample stand. The only respite is the office supply aisle. Nobody lingers there. Checkout continues the rugby scrum, and while you wait and wait, you can witness a feeding frenzy in the food court of people gorging on overly salted, greasy food. Is this still my junior high lunchroom? I'll stick with Target, thank you. Plenty of parking. Maneuvering the aisles is not a contact sport. Merchandise availability is generally predictable. And best of all, whether I want one orange or a bag of oranges, they have me covered. Tom,
I very much appreciate what you've written. Obviously, Costco is not your thing. But if you love going to Target, join their new improved, what do they, Inner Circle, what do they call that? Circle?
the Circle Rewards, that's been, yeah.
But now there's a membership with it, and you get all kinds of freebies with it, free delivery within an hour, all this stuff. They're mimicking Amazon Prime and Walmart Plus or the warehouse clubs where you have to pay the membership fee. So if Target is your thing, shopping, Target's markups obviously are higher than the markups at the warehouse clubs. So you can bring some of that cost down by joining Target's new, it's called Inner Circle membership, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Whatever that is. So check it out. And as for Costco, I am strategic when I go there. I do not go there on Saturday or Sunday unless somebody's got a gun pointed at my head.
Right, for sure. I appreciate all of your advice to me, but you stink like wet laundry forgotten in the washer for a week for oversimplifying the premiums versus deductible consideration on insurance. It's true that higher deductibles equal lower premiums, but you ignore the important consideration of the risk of the increased cost of a claim. For instance, I recently got homeowners insurance, and the annual policy premium with a $2,500 deductible was only $76 cheaper than the deductible at $1,000. I would need to go almost 20 years without a claim to actually save money with the cheaper high deductible policy. Ellie,
oh my goodness, thank you for posting this, because when I talked about this before, I realized later I failed to make the most important point. And that is the homeowners insurance market is so unstable right now that you do not want to ever make a claim against homeowners insurance unless it is a catastrophic loss only. You don't want to give them a reason to cancel you. You don't want to give them a reason to heavily surcharge your premiums for years to come because of making a claim. Homeowners insurance now needs to be looked at is catastrophic coverage only, no minor claims. And for that reason, you want the deductible as high as you can stand, or as high as, if you have a loan against your home, as high as your mortgage lender will permit. Because if you're never going to make a claim, except if the sky has fallen on your life, you will actually benefit from having that higher deductible. It also takes away the temptation of you making a smaller claim.
Clark, I think you might be stinky here. A person wrote in about being $40,000 in debt and thinking about paying it off with a home equity loan. Why not ever mention bankruptcy? I've listened to this podcast for 3 years, and I think I've never even heard you mention the word bankruptcy. I know it is bad for credit, but so is being behind on payments. For some people, not filing would be bad for their wallet versus other alternatives. Chris?
Chris, thank you, and I appreciate that. There are situations where bankruptcy is the last but best option for someone who is deeply in debt. The reason you don't hear me talk about it a lot, unless somebody specifically asks me about it, is I've got a world out there where there are ads all day long, messages all day long about filing for bankruptcy. And it's painted as if it's so simple and so easy. And yes, there are situations where someone's hit a point that the best option is a bankruptcy filing. But I don't want to feed into that advertising frenzy about, oh, you broke a nail. Oh, you should file for bankruptcy. Oh, you took a left turn instead of a right. You should file for bankruptcy. I don't want to be part of that mentality. If I'm posed a question that it was somebody's circumstance where it does make sense to file for bankruptcy, I would say it. $40,000 in debt? It's hard for me to get my arms around that being something that bankruptcy would be the best option for. It would depend on a lot of specific circumstances. So, Chris, that's why you don't hear me say bankruptcy often, because if somebody does have a viable, practical way to get out of debt, I'd rather them do that than go through a bankruptcy that will stay on their record for 10 years. And you got to pay meaningful money to the courts and to the bankruptcy lawyer for doing the bankruptcy. So I guess in this case, I hear your sentiment, but I feel like I'm not comfortable using that as a routine alternative option for people. Coming up next, though, we're going to talk the complete opposite. People who are able to build wealth over time, and how it's happening in America is a way it's really never happened before. I'm going to share that with you. And on the Clark Stinks front, I want to tell you how much I appreciate all of you who've taken the time to post. And I'm really sorry that we get so many Clark Stinks each week. There are so many we can't get to each week. And occasionally we do an all Clark Stinks podcast. When they really get backed up again, Christa, maybe it's time for us to do that again. But coming up ahead, opposite land, people who become millionaires, how Americans are doing it now. Okay, it's true. We all have things we obsess about, and this is one I obsess with. That how, not all of us, but many of us, can become financially independent simply by living on less than what we make. And it's just fascinating if you take the tool that I told you about recently that we've added at Clark.com that lets you do what ifs. If I start putting this much money in a Roth IRA or this much money in an investment account or this much money in a 401k, and I keep doing this week after week or month after month, how much money am I going to have down the road? And what's so amazing is it doesn't have to be a lot of money. If you do it when you're young, you put money in, living on less than what you make, and the payoff down the road is gigantic. And you got to leave that alone. You can't be tempted to pull that money out. Hopefully no circumstances make that the only compelling, obvious option. There's a new report from Fidelity Investments that has, get this, 23 million 401k participants. Fidelity's a monster of 401ks. And the average balance in a Fidelity 401k plan now is $119,000. That's up over the years. And Gen Xers, wow, For people who've been consistent, putting money aside, in other words, they've been putting money in 15 years in a row, they now have, on average, more than $500,000 in their 401k. The number that have overall that have $1 million or more dollars in a 401k, up 41% over the last year. Those that have become millionaires just in 401ks have an average balance over $1.5 million. How much are people contributing that are getting into rarefied air with a 401k? What percent of their pay are they contributing? What's normally considered to be the unluckiest number in the Western world, 13%. You know, I've always talked about a dime of every dollar. The people who've made it to millionaire status, they're saving 13% of their pay. Everything in life with money comes down to habits. Habits. Habits that work for us, habits that work against us. How do people overcome financial oops in life? They've lived on less than what they make, and they build reserves. You think about animals that hibernate in the winter. How do they survive? They survive by storing up food. Money, in that sense, is a similar analogy. The habit of automatic saving out of every check is what creates the habits that make a difference. You know, something I shared probably 2 years ago were stats about the difference in the amount of money people had put aside for their future who work for an employer that offers a retirement plan versus people who are on their own and have to self-motivate. And it's crazy the half of people who have access to an employer-provided plan, how much more money they have been able to put aside for the future than people who have to do it themselves, who are self-employed or work for one of the half of companies that don't have retirement plans or have, smaller businesses that have not set up retirement plans. So if you are self-employed or you work for a business that doesn't offer any kind of retirement plan, then you have to create your own equivalent of what happens at an employer with a 401k. And the magic pill is setting up a Roth IRA, because I am the man from Roth, and putting money into it every month automatically. Not intending to, set it up automatically where money goes into that Roth. Because the wealth you can create is just shocking over time. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money every paycheck or every month. It's the buildup of years that leads to financial independence, where you have the choices that can change what your life is like later in your life. It's such a hard thing as human beings to defer gratification. And that's why people who work at a place where they have the plans, often with automatic enrollment like we do for our employees at my company, when you're automatically enrolled, the habit is there. But when you don't have that nudge from an employer, you've got to be the one who creates that nudge. And if you don't know how to do a Roth IRA, we have a simple guide at clark.com that walks you through how you can set it up and be good to go and putting money in it in 15 minutes or less. That's like the old Geico, was it Geico commercials?
I don't remember.
Give us 15
Sounds
minutes
right.
and you'll save 15% or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Chris in Texas says, we purchased our home in 2019 before home prices skyrocketed. After COVID, our home has almost doubled and we couldn't afford to purchase it now. The town we live in is very affluent, and it's my opinion that contractors bid high on projects for us because of the town we live in.
That's called the zip code premium. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We do okay financially, but we live in an established neighborhood, and it's not one of the flashy ones. What's the best way, and what is the best vehicle to get a loan to redo a kitchen? Can we get a fair price, and how can we finance it? With interest rates up, I could use your advice.
So, Chris, I don't know how long you're planning to take to pay off the kitchen remodel, but most kitchen remodels, unless you go crazy, you could pay it off in 5 years. And credit unions have the superior product for that called a 5-year home equity loan. And so if you're not a member of a credit union yet, you want to see which ones are around you, go to their websites before you join and see what they're charging on a 5-year home equity loan. They're usually pretty favorable rates. It's a fixed rate, and you pay it off like you would like a car payment, a 60-month car loan. You pay off the kitchen remodel the same way. And that would be my favorite way, never at a bank, always at a credit union. This is a never rule. I don't know of a single case ever where a bank offered a good deal equivalent to what a credit union would offer on a 5-year home equity loan. As for finding a contractor, it is a fact that people do get charged more when they live in a more affluent zip code for home remodels and additions. It's just the way the marketplace works. So, but there are big differences in quality and price from different contractors. If you've seen remodeling going on or additions or whatever at neighbors' houses in your neighborhood, chat people up, find out how they felt about who they used. Did they meet their time schedule? Did they stay on price in terms of what they quoted versus what they did? And pay close attention when you do the kitchen remodel contract with whoever it is you use. You want to make sure you're very specific on the scope of work and the materials. You should go out and figure out what cabinets you want, what grade cabinets you want, what countertops you want, what appliance levels you want, what flooring you want. That up front, knowing that helps the contractor and helps you because they can much more zero in on prices. People spend from 10 grand to, believe it or not, in fancy houses, more than $1 million on kitchens and every price point in between. And so it's all based on what you're trying to do in that kitchen and what level and grade of stuff you want to have happen.
$1 million.
Come on, have you not ever seen any of that stuff?
No.
Oh, come on. You don't think in Beverly Hills
$1 million, really?
on a kitchen reno?
Okay. Gordon in Texas.
Okay, I heard. Okay, so now I got to tell.
Oh, boy.
Talking to some very wealthy friends who were hiring a contractor who the minimum for the contractor to hire this contractor for a reno of their home that was more extensive than just a kitchen was $1 million.
Wow.
That was the minimum. Who has that kind of money? Okay.
Gordon in Texas says, in the 1990s, I used Smart 401k. They gave me selections to invest in. I paid between $100 and $200 a year for them to provide me with 10 or so selections for the best investments. This was done once a quarter. They were part of the mutual fund store, and they were bought out, and the Smart 401k program went away. Is there any other investment service you know of that will give you a quarter-to-quarter investment suggestion? These suggestions paid off very well over the years that I used them.
I have never found one of these rec services that I have felt comfortable recommending. My default that I've felt so comfortable with, Gordon, over the years is not to target specific segments of the market, but instead to use a age-based thing, a target retirement fund. I am so a believer in the target retirement fund for proper asset allocation as somebody gets closer and closer to retirement, and the costs of doing them so low. And all your money in a 401k, if you do it, you go all in with target retirement fund. But if you really want specific allocation advice, you can hire somebody to do a checkup for you once a year, once a quarter, whatever, by hiring a fee-only financial planner to help you. Fiduciary to help you with doing the asset allocation. And it's a hard area to find someone you can trust. But remember, in your case, you'd be hiring somebody whose only job is to give you advice, because the 401k is within the four walls of the 401k, and the investments they'd help you allocate to are the ones in the plan. But I have never found, maybe in the short term, somebody fund picking can be helpful. Long term, what you're looking for from a financial planner is much wider. What are your goals? Are you on target for them? What other things should you be doing besides the workplace plan? So this is not an area that I'm really strong about as something I would do.
What about like the Fidelity or Vanguard service where you use them?
So in the case of Vanguard, if you hire them for financial advice in the personal advisory service, that would not be one of the things they would be involved in, because I don't know if there's a legal reason they cannot be involved in guiding you on what you would do inside your 401k. I don't know if Fidelity has a different process for that. I love the advice programs that the big low-cost companies are setting up, or Vanguard now is way set up. I think they're approaching $1 trillion under management in their personal advisory service. It's because it's low cost and it seems to have worked for people.
Okay. Mario in Michigan says, on a recent trip, our suitcase was stolen off the luggage carousel at the airport. The airline has told us to file a claim for the items in the suitcase. My question is, what will the process entail? Will they assign a claims adjuster to the case, or will they simply reimburse us based on the amount of the receipts we provide? Is there anything aside from providing receipts we should do to ensure we receive proper reimbursement?
Be prepared to follow up and be prepared to counter whatever the airline offers. This is an area that's been a problem for people over the years, is getting timely and fair reimbursement for your luggage itself and for the items that were stolen. In my case, my wife and I laugh. If my bag was stolen, the claim would be for like $35, because that's all my clothes would be worth in total. But for a normal earthling, you could have a meaningful claim, and the documentation you've already provided is fantastic with receipts. And if the airline does not pay in a timely basis and they stonewall you, be prepared to file a claim against the airline with the U.S. Department of Transportation. The airline will be forced to answer, and the answer usually will be, we have now issued a check to Mario in this amount of money, hope he's happy. If they offer you an amount of money that is not what you feel is fair, push back politely, but push back and explain why you feel your claim should be for more money. Anyone who's flown for a long time knows that you used to have to go through security after you claimed your bag at the baggage carousel, and airlines pretty much have discontinued that around the country because it was an expense on the airlines where they would check to make sure that the bag you were taking was actually yours, that you had the claim check for it. They've decided, I guess, that it's cheaper to pay for luggage stolen off the carousel than it is to have the security there to make sure that a thief is not running off with your bag. But hopefully all's well will end well with the claim that you have filed. And my answer always, if I can't carry it with me, it doesn't go on the trip. And thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And I want to add an annex. You know, we're about saving more, spending less, avoiding getting ripped off. Domestic airfares are declining. This summer, air travel, if you shop around, is going to be meaningfully lower cost than it was last summer. There are going to be a lot of bargains out there for you. Take your time, shop thoroughly, grab a deal. Have a great weekend.